Hey everybody, I want to welcome you into another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast. Josh Marley, your host as always, going to welcome in the co-host tonight. No special guest, it's the same guy every week. Anthony, you're going to carry the load tonight, so how's it going?
God, man, I mean, at this point, we're just passing each other off like it's nothing. Not even special. Hurtful, man. Hurtful. But I'll tell you what was special, the performance from the Tar Heels on Saturday, a nice performance against Pittsburgh. We'll break that down, and then we got a huge game, really one of the more special matchups in a while with State that we have to break down as well.
Yeah, you're right. The game against Pittsburgh, we previewed it. You and I were under the belief that it would be a very tough game, a road opener to start conference play, and a very much improved Pittsburgh team. And it, quite frankly, from, I guess you'd say, the under 8 timeout in the first half the game was pretty much over because Carolina just took control. They quit fouling for a couple of minutes, and after that, it just seemed to put the game on ice.
Yeah, you're pretty much right. Let me get my notes here. You're exactly right about that. I had it in between, the under 12 and the under 8. They switched to the zone. Really did a great job of taking away the drive to the basket, which was something that was such a crucial part of the early scoring for Pittsburgh. Really, that under 16 to the under 12 was pretty much where Pittsburgh did a lot of their damage. Xavier Johnson really started getting to the basket, which you could see early on he was fired up, but that led to a couple of out-of-control plays. And Carolina, I thought, took advantage of that the rest of the first half after they went to zone. And that was the best thing. They really forced Pittsburgh to have to start shooting the three. They only really had one guy coming into the game that was able to shoot the three in Wilson Frame, and he really didn't shoot all that well the other day. I mean, they were 1 of 10 in the first half from deep, and that is exactly what you want from Carolina, a team that, remember, over the last couple of seasons had really struggled to defend the three. I thought they did a sensational job of that in this game against Pittsburgh. And, there were a couple of times where Pittsburgh was really able to get inside, but they do have some younger guys down there that weren't able to finish inside. And I thought, for the most part, guys like Luke May and Garrison Brooks did a really great job of taking that away. The biggest part, I thought, of the game was pretty much from that under 12 to about the under 4, in between that area. There was a time where Pittsburgh had 0 points in 6 minutes and 39 seconds. In that time, they got to the free throw line just twice and missed both of those free throws. But really, at that point, remember, just prior to that, and you actually texted me and said, look, if you breathe anywhere in the vicinity of anyone today, it seems to be a foul. And really, we did a great job. By the way, I don't understand why I pronounced foul like I did, but look, Kenny Williams had his third foul of the game before the under 8 timeout. They were in the bonus with 14:22 left in the first half. And somehow Carolina was able to settle themselves down, and I thought did a fantastic job, went on a 16-0 run. And that was really, I think, what separated them in that game. And the biggest thing was Kobe White really started shooting well along with Cam Johnson.
Yeah, I thought when I had the chance to go back and look at the stat sheet, I was unable to watch the game. Thankfully, with my job, I got to listen to
Unbelievable.
First time I missed him play all year, and it killed me. I thought, and I listened about 3/4 of the action.
Mm-hmm.
And you look, from the action I listened to, and then you go look at the box score. This game was won on the defensive end because even though Carolina scored 85 points, which is below their average, but still a lot in the ACC, they only shot the ball 43% from the field and only 34% from deep. So it was not a good shooting game for the Heels. And it's something that we've been talking about, I guess since the Gonzaga-Kentucky games, where at some point you're going to need your defense to step up and help fuel the offense because there's going to be games where you're not going to shoot it that well. And they've had that against Davidson, Harvard, and now Pittsburgh, where they haven't shot it well, but they've bought in a little bit more defensively, and they're a little bit more active, and they're getting stops, and that's helping their offense when they're not shooting and executing in the half court. And while I know a lot of people are troubled by the shooting numbers, and Kenny Williams is yet to break out of his slump, and maybe, Luke May hasn't been as efficient and Kobe White shoots a lot to score a lot. At least we saw the other day that we can play defense at a really high level and get points off of those stops when in the half court. We're not executing at the level we need to. And I think that's a big part for this team, because you're about to go on the road against another opponent that if you don't execute in the half court, you're going to have a long night, but you're going to have to get stops to keep yourself in the game. And Roy Williams said it after the Harvard game. It's big boy basketball for the next 18 games. And I thought against Pittsburgh, they really played like some grown men defensively.
I mean, it was easily, in my opinion, their best inside-out game of the year. I mean, everything, they were doing a great job. I thought, okay, the field goal percentage wasn't that high. I'm going to be honest. When I was watching the game and then I saw the stats afterwards, I really don't know how it was that low, because I thought they shot better than they actually did. I thought they played better on the offensive end than the numbers actually read off. The three-point shot, it wasn't sensational, but they were 10 of 24. Took a lot of shots. Look, if you're hitting 10 threes a game, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
And trust me, there were a few that normally you would kind of scratch your head and say, okay, Cam Johnson, why are you taking that shot? He was just feeling it. He hit one from the letter P in Pitt at midcourt. He was on. He was ready to go. And, that's the type of shooting performance that you need. You don't necessarily need to shoot out of the gym maybe like they did against Gonzaga. But it's like you mentioned. They've become a lot more active on the defensive end. One of the main things that I've loved, and one of the things they had to adjust in-game was, look, early on in the game, the guards simply weren't stopping the basketball up at the top of the key. They adjusted to that mostly by going to the zone, which we talked about that on this podcast a couple of weeks ago. Does Roy need to go more zone a little more often? And I'm still one of those guys that's maybe a proponent of that. Look, I'm not going to tell Roy Williams how to coach, but that was probably the best stretch of defensive basketball that we have seen all year. And frankly, we didn't even turn them over all that much. We just did a really good job of being where we had to be, and it extended into the bench as well. You had guys like Brandon Robinson, Andrew Platek, who, he came in the game and did pick up an early foul, but I thought, in his time that he was in there, he was active defensively. And then even a guy like Nazir Little, who, everybody's been questioning him on the defensive end. And, I know that, some people, look, I think Nazir Little has been a great defender in the half court. There were some questions for me early in the season about him getting back on the defensive end in fast break situations. He seemed to answer that over the last couple of games, and I thought he did a fantastic job of that again on Saturday against Pittsburgh. And look, right now, if I'm Roy Williams, look, there's still some things that you definitely got to improve on the defensive end. You don't want to see those stretches early in the game where they were able to get inside and get to the foul line. But I'm telling you, this is honestly night and day from the early part of the season with a defense that, we didn't think could stop anything. And now, okay, we're feeling a little bit more confident that this team can not only, make some stops, but we think, okay, yeah, this team can really shut down some of the lesser opponents in the ACC and definitely hold us around in games, hold opponents to around 70 points, which is kind of where you want to be in the ACC.
Yeah, I'm going to touch on that zone thing. I wrote about it in the recap. I'm not a guy as a fan that likes the zone, just because Roy Williams hasn't liked the zone. So me as a young fan was influenced. Well, my coach doesn't like it, I'm not going to like it. You're never going to see us come out in a 2-3, and we'll probably never finish the game in the 2-3. I think the thing, though, that this does for Roy Williams is that's in the backs, in the arsenal of stuff you can use. This will be a great thing in the tournament when you're trying, because there's not a whole lot of it on film. But let's say you get in a game like, tomorrow night or, Virginia Tech with great guards or Duke or one of those guys, which are having problems containing the ball. You go to that, and it really disrupts the flow of the game. Mm-hmm. And the fact that there's been success there gives them a little bit more, I guess, faith that, okay, when we go to this defense, it's going to work, which I think is a very important thing to have. It's not just, where in years past we go to the zone because nothing else has worked. It's a last effort to try to save the game or try to fix something. And I like that. But the turnaround defensively, we talked about it after Kentucky, maybe the break while going home for Christmas and getting some practices before Davidson and the Harvard's game, knowing that ACC play was a week away, that would get their attention. We don't know what happened, whether it was a buy-in from the players or the coaches just started coaching it harder. The turnaround's very noticeable with the amount of points they've given up the last 3 weeks. They're the three lowest of the season. And it's just really good to see if this team wants to compete in the ACC and compete to win a national championship. They're not as good on offense to go out there and just outscore everybody. Most teams aren't. So they've got to get better defensively, and so far they have. There were some troubles that came out of the Pittsburgh game, I thought. They fouled entirely way too much. And look, we can sit here and complain about the officiating. If they called a foul, there was something there that shouldn't have been there. Whether it's your hands into where an area was not supposed to be, or it's you're not moving fast enough with your feet. And Roy said it post-game, we got to play with our feet, not our hands. It's really that simple. You got to move. You got to stay in front of the ball. You got to do all kinds of stuff. And they just didn't do that early. And then rebounding. Maybe the numbers got lopsided because you put in some reserves and all that, but you still only out-rebounded your opponent by 5.
Yep.
I'm going to be quite frank. Against the ACC top tiers, that might not be enough. Against against a state, Virginia Tech, Duke, Virginia, you're going to have to be a lot more effective and efficient on the glass. I mean, they gave up 16 offensive rebounds to a team that missed a lot of shots. You gave up a lot of second chance opportunities. Now, granted, they didn't convert. That's just way too many.
Yeah, I mean, and they're really not one of the bigger teams you're going to face in the ACC. There will be some bigger teams. I mean, just imagine if you're giving up that many offensive rebounds to Pittsburgh, just imagine what you're going to give up to Florida State, who's going to have a ton of size on the inside. And, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the one thing that I think Carolina did a really great job of, they scored 20 points off of turnovers to Pitt's 9, and they had 15 second chance points to Pitt's 8. As you mentioned, 16 offensive rebounds. They only converted 4 of those into baskets. So that's definitely helpful. But, yeah, no, I agree with that. And the rebounding margin was something that I thought, really wasn't as good as you'd like it to be. But, there's always going to be things that you can work on in games like this. But overall, I still think this was one of the best efforts of the season. There were a lot of guys I thought that stepped up into maybe some bigger roles than they had to. And one of the guys, that you definitely got to shout out here is Brandon Robinson. I thought he had a fantastic game. Yeah, he only scored 5 points, and people will probably look at that and say, well, how did he really play all that well? On the defensive end, he was one of the most active guys from the word go when he got in the game. And he stepped up big time with Kenny Williams, having to play most of the game with foul trouble. I mean, there was a point where Kenny Williams re-entered the game, and you got to hand this to Kenny Williams, re-entered the game right after the under-12 timeout in the second half and did play until I think it was about the 1:45 mark, something around there, where Roy put most of the Blue Squad members in. So we did a good job, but outside of that, he was on and off the floor the entire night. Brandon Robinson played 15 minutes. That's easily the most minutes that he's seen in a long, long time. And when thrust into action, I thought he did a fantastic job. So you really got to hand it to him. And look, you said the bench is going to get smaller as we get into ACC play, but when you're having some injury issues to Sterling Manley, you have the injury that Andrew Platek was kind of fighting through a little bit. It's good to see a guy like Brandon Robinson step up and have a good game.
Yeah, I told you when we talked on Saturday we would have to talk about him because this is a guy that, has only seen playing time in the non-conference season because he hasn't earned the trust of the coaching staff to play in the ACC in the big-time spotlight. And I thought it was important for him, confidence-wise, that in 15 minutes he could be productive. He had 5 points, 3 steals, 2 offensive rebounds. Mm-hmm. That's, I'll live with that anytime, right, no matter who we're playing against. And it also gives him some confidence that now, the coach said it publicly. He has confidence that he can go in and do a good job, and he hasn't got beaten out by a Leaky Black or even an Andrew Platek, guys that are a little bit more scrappier. And I think he's carved out a role on this team, and is going to be a big part of this team's success in the regular season and the postseason. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this guy continue to grow, because you know me, since a freshman, I've always said, look, if he can get it defensively, he's got savvy on offense to score the ball. He's just never been that great of a defender, and that's not all his fault. He's limited in terms of his ability because he's a smaller guy, not as quick, and not as tall. But he's definitely improved his all three years on campus, and now he's starting to reap the rewards. We're going to go ahead and transition into the preview of tomorrow night, or I guess now it's tonight's game.
Can I read my final notes, though, really quickly that I had on this game?
I mean, I guess.
Jeez. The attitude in this room right now is ridiculous.
Nick Saban's wearing on me after the ass kicking they just got beat, so I'm trying to take his...
You know what? You're starting to get on my daggum nerves, all right? What the dickens is going on right now? Okay. So here's what I got. Okay, by the way, I don't know if you knew this stat, but you're going to love this one. Heels with 24 assists on their 32 baskets the other day. I know you're a man that loves the passing of the basketball. That was a fantastic stat. I mean, that really is a ridiculous stat, though, especially for a group that, was kind of at moments just thrown together because, remember, with Sterling Manley in the rotation for most of the early part of the season, these are groups that haven't played a lot together, and then you had Brandon Robinson in on a lot of these groups, as well as Andrew Platek, so that was a good one. Held Pitt to 30.6% shooting, which is fantastic. 2 of 19 from three-point range. So you'll take that any day of the week. You mentioned it. Heel shot 42.7%, 10 of 24 from deep, though, so got to like that. Turn the ball over just 11 times. That's back-to-back games that they've done that, so starting to take care of the ball a little bit more. Early in the season we had a lot of trouble with the turnovers, but you can see that that's starting to be sort of, I guess, that's starting to become some muscle memory for some of these guys. Really like the way that Kobe White was able to take care of the ball. I thought he was a little out of control early on in the game, but really settled down once Seventh Woods came in for just a little bit, and then he hit the floor once again. I thought Kobe White from that point on was sensational. And again, Seventh Woods doing what he's supposed to do when he comes in. Tar Heels with 7 blocked shots on the day. Easily their best number all season. Remember, their leader coming into this game, I believe, was still Garrison Brooks with not even 1 block per game so far this season. So that's good to see. Heels did commit 24 personal fouls, though, so that's something that they've got to get ironed out. Again, Pittsburgh, if you were watching the game, one of the things that they brought up, Dan Bonner brought up on the show or on the presentation was that, look, this is pretty much their MO. That very similar to Duke. They like to attack the lane, try to get to the line, so makes a little bit of sense, but that maybe will be something that we could see later on in the season against Duke, or potentially some of the other teams in the ACC will be taking notes on that. So we got to be able to avoid picking up a ton of early offensive foul or early defensive fouls, offensive fouls as well. But we don't want to get into as much foul trouble as we've gotten into early on in the season, especially Garrison Brooks, because with Sterling Manley working through an injury, Roy still likes to go big inside, so you got to avoid that. But in the end, look, easily Carolina's best all-around performance of the season. I mean, in my opinion, there's no other game. I know that people will point to Gonzaga. I don't think that was the greatest defensive performance. This game, to me, against an opponent that we can both agree that is an improving team in the ACC and is a team that within, I think, a couple of years could be in the tournament, I'm pretty proud. So
yeah,
I think we can move on to state.
Yeah, we're gonna dive right in. This is it's a ranked matchup, which is for the stat people out there like me that love the ACC, love the rivalries. It's in the 40s and the times that they've met as ranked opponents.
47, which is now the second most all time in college basketball history. Can you name the number?
It's the Duke Carolina rivalry, which I think it's 82 times we've met together as rivals.
That is right. I thought that Louisville and Kentucky was the best rivalry matchup in the sport. Isn't this what people are trying to tell us? But that's for a different podcast.
Yeah, we don't acknowledge anything related to that rivalry or that state. on this podcast. So we're gonna jump, get right into it. I'm gonna be quite frank. This is probably the toughest game Carolina's gonna have played all year long. This will be by far their toughest environment all year long. Look, I know Roy Williams owns State at home and in Raleigh, but no matter what it is, when we go there, at least until the game's in doubt, that place is balls to the walls, from the word go. They hate us. That place is going to be loud. They're going to be into it. And this State team, I've only seen them a little bit. I love what I see from them. They're deep. They're athletic. They defend at a really high level. Kevin Keats has done a fantastic job in only his now second year in Raleigh with a roster that this year is full of transfers. I mean, this is as patchwork as it can get. I think he has 7 transfers on a roster that he has now that people think he can compete for a top 3 finish in the ACC. They're led by Torin Dorn, who's a guard that I think is the most underrated guard in the conference, averaging 15 points a game, and he's shooting 53% from the field. So he's effective while efficient. And their other guy, Markel Johnson, is a guy that, he's their leading assister. But, I feel as much as Torin Dorn is successful, that kid in the big moment never shies away. I think he's a physical guard. And I think it's going to be a really tough matchup for Carolina on the wings. You may see Roy Williams go zone if for some reason we have a hard time containing the Wolfpack on the perimeter as we did against Pittsburgh. But overall, I think this State team is a quality team, probably as good a team as they've had in the last 5 or 6 years. And I think it's going to be really hard for Carolina to go in there and win the game tomorrow night.
Yeah, look, this is the first time. I don't know how much you buy into the ESPN FPI or whatever, where they factor in the percentage to win the game. Look, State's favored in the game.
Yeah.
And they're also favored in Vegas. This is a lot different of a State team than we've seen in the last couple of years. You mentioned it. And, you look, they're going to play 4 guards, and all of these guys have their own strengths. You mentioned, Torin Dorn, fantastic. Markel Johnson, oh, man, he has been lighting it up, man, plain and simple. And, they've got Braxton Beverly can be dangerous from deep. So, look, they've got to, Carolina's going to have to protect the perimeter. The one area that I think Carolina needs to dominate is on the glass. Look, if you're missing shots down there, they're playing 4 guards. There's no excuse. You should be on the glass, absolutely destroying them. And here's the thing for Carolina. I want to see them get out in transition. Make this State team run with you. And, if they can do that, look, this has to be one of those nights where the shooting is on point. I know we've had some games this year where we haven't shot the basketball well. If we're going to pick a night to shoot the basketball well, it's got to be against State on Tuesday night, plain and simple. Because if not, look, and here's the thing that I want to stress to people. Let's say we get beat in a close game. This is not a bad loss. You mentioned it. This team is very dangerous. The ACC this year, trust me, they say it, every year you always hear about the gauntlet. This year in the ACC, I think is as deep as the ACC has been in a long time. And this is one of the main teams in it right now. And you can say, look, their out-of-conference schedule was terrible. Look, I know. They were 4th to last in strength of schedule out of conference. But this team beat an Auburn team that shot the lights out of it from 3 up until they played them. So it's not going to be easy. Not going to be easy, but it is possible. We saw Wisconsin beat them earlier in the year. It's not like it's an impossible task, but Carolina's going to have to come ready. And I think, look, they're going to realize that they've got to step up to the plate once they step out onto that court. And they see how rowdy some of these State fans are going to be. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough one, but there's definitely a way to win this game.
Yeah, this isn't you're not playing an unbeatable opponent. State's very beatable, but they're very good. And I'm just going to be quite frank. You can't go into this environment and this type of game, shoot 43% and expect to win.
Right.
Like, you can do that at Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh's not where, they're expecting to be, and that's okay. On the road against the team that views you as as their biggest rival, there's going to be a lot of emotion in that building, as there always is for these type of games. You're going to have to play really, really well. The good news is that most times we play really, really well there. Whether it was Tyler Hansborough, whether it was Marcus Page, or last year Luke May made that place his home with I think that was one of his 30 and 15 performances, and he shot a 3 from hell that somehow went in, and it's just one of those games that Carolina just year in, year out they perform very well in, but it's still a hard place to go play. And it's going to take a 40-minute effort, a complete effort. I think that the key to this game is turnovers. State's gonna pick up full court. They're gonna trap. They're gonna do a lot of stuff defensively to try to get us to turn the ball over to get runouts in transition. Kobe White turned the ball over 5 times against Pittsburgh. And some of them are correctable, and some of them just happen. He's going to have to take care of the ball at a very high clip, or you're going to see a lot of seventh woods, which isn't bad. But the problem is the seventh woods isn't going to give you the type of scoring that we got from Kobe Saturday. And look, we only had 3 people scoring double figures Saturday, which when you scored 85 points, you'd probably think you'd see 5 or 6 guys. So the balance wasn't there. So hopefully tomorrow night there is balance. I'm with you. And turnovers and rebounding.
Yep.
Carolina normally controls the boards against State, and you're playing a team that plays smaller, but they also get to the boards. They average 40 rebounds a game, so they do a pretty good job for a undersized team rebounding the ball. But this has got to be a game that Garrison Brooks and Luke May and even Cam Johnson take it upon themselves to go to the glass, both defensively and offensively. That's where these types of games are won.
Add a name in there, too. Nazir Little has to do the same thing. We saw it a couple of times against Pittsburgh where he knew, look, my jump shot is not here today. There were a few times he actually got down in the post and backed down a defender a couple of times. And he's going to need to do that again, I think, in this game against State. Because even against these guys, you're going to have a size advantage against some of these guys that are going to be matched up on you. And I want to see him on the glass. I think... And look, he's done it so far this year. He needs to do it again in this game against State, and I think he will. And I think some of the other guys on the team need to feed off of his energy and say, look, if anything, we need to make sure we're on the glass and getting every loose ball that we possibly can in this game.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just one of those things where, look, rebounding is all about an effort and a want to.
Right.
If you want to rebound the ball, you're going to give the effort to go rebound the ball. As important as it is to the head coach in the program, I think we're going to see an uptick in the effort and the desire in that facet of the game, and we're going to steadily improve. Look, both teams are very even. Look at the stats. They both average 89 points per game.
Yep.
They both assist in the State 18, Carolina 20. Blocks per game 3.9 Carolina, 3.8 State. Steals per game 7.9 Carolina, 7.8 State. You look at the numbers where they differ. Rebounds per game, 44.5 for Carolina, 40.6 for State. Field goal percentage, 47.7 for the Heels, 52.1 for State. So those two stats could be affected by the rebounding. If Carolina rebounds the ball, especially on the offensive end at a very high rate, they could very well, that could be the deciding factor of the game. And then, of course, the turnovers. You don't want to turn the ball over in the open court and give this team and give this fan and give that building a much more energy.
One of the other things really quickly about getting the ball inside, like you mentioned, if you can get into this bench a little bit here, State only runs in most of the games that they've really played their major lineups, when they don't have to go deep into the bench because they're blowing someone out. They really only play about 9 guys. And really, I think one of those guys really just averages somewhere below 5 minutes. So it really seems like it's an 8-deep group. if you can get into this bench a little bit, look, Carolina, we know that we have a deep bench. Now, of course, it'll still be shorter because is Sterling Manley going to play or
he's out tomorrow night?
Okay, so he won't play. But still, Carolina still holds the advantage when it comes to depth. That could be one of the areas that could be important as well. So maybe getting the ball inside. Like to see the guards drive the basket a little bit more as well. Kenny Williams really didn't do a whole lot of that against Pittsburgh. I'd like to see him get back to doing some of that against NC State. If we can do that and create some foul issues for these guys, we could get into a bench that frankly really isn't that deep.
Yeah, I mean that's always in big time games. That's always a major factor. Who gets in whose bench first? Mm-hmm. Like you said, Carolina's a little bit shorter with the Manley injury, which means guys like Brandon Robinson and Nazir Little got to be more effective when in the game and be more aggressive. I think we've talked enough about what we got to do when what we can't do. We're going to go ahead and pick the game, pick our player. I'll go with my heart because my head says State wins. My heart says Roy Williams wins, and this team wins tomorrow night in Raleigh just because it's second nature. It's what they do. And I think people are kind of buying into all of State, and they're going into the game. It's going to be all about what State is doing and not all about what Carolina can do and will do. And I think we'll feed off of that and find a way. Like, it's not an upset. We're the higher ranked team. I don't care what the BPI in Vegas say. And so I think Carolina holds serve, gets their second road win of conference play to move to 2-0 in the ACC. And I think the guy that's gonna have a game, I think Kobe White's gonna take it personally that he's got to be better as a floor general, because we all know he can score the crap out of the ball. He's as good a shooter as I've seen in that position in my 10 years watching this program. This includes Marcus Page. Like, the kid can flat out score. Mm-hmm. But I think he'll take it personally that he's got to protect the ball and be a lot better running the offense and getting the other guys that need the ball in their spots and get their shots.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess I don't really know if it's a hard pick or a little bit of sense. Look, the State, I mentioned it. They played Auburn, but again, that they haven't really played anybody else outside of Wisconsin that really has been all that good, and that was a game that they did lose. So, we don't really know a whole lot about them. It will be a tough test for both sides, and I think ultimately, look, the pedigree of Carolina, we've seen these tough games, and maybe this is where some of these games that we scheduled early in the year really pay off. I think these guys will come out really fired up because, look, they're not too far removed from the game against Pittsburgh. It's only a 3-day layoff. This is not like that unbelievable month of December that we just keep making jokes about where we literally played a game and took 3 months off. This is where we're getting back into playing every 3 days, every 4 days. This is where you can build a little bit of momentum. I said it myself, and I don't care, if you want to go with what I'm saying or not. I believe that it was the best overall performance that I've seen from them the entire season. That's not nothing. I think they build off of that. It's a close one. I think they win the game by 5. But I'll take Carolina, and I think the guy that everyone will be talking about, look, you mentioned some of the names, Tyler Hansborough, Marcus Page. Look, every time they showed up into that building, they found a way to put on great performances. Luke May was the guy there last year. I think there's a little more magic left in the tank for him this year. I think Luke May steps up, has a really good performance. And look, do I think it's going to be maybe one of those 30-point games? Maybe not. Maybe it's one of those games where he scores 18. Maybe he just gets into the 20-point range. But the main thing is, I think it's going to be one of those games where he'll have at least 18 and 15, combined. I think he has a great game, and I think Carolina pulls out the victory. Luke May, the guy you'll be talking about. So, is there anything else that we want to get off our chest before this game? I just want to
add that this matchup being ranked, being a primetime slot on ESPN, is a win for college basketball. It's a win for the ACC. Look, I understand the hatred for the program, and it's really not even the program, it's the fan base. And look, I'll argue with the State fan any day of the week. the ACC needs NC State to be really, really good in basketball. Because when the conference was at its heyday, it was when Duke, Carolina, and State, the Triangle, were legit national contenders year in, year out. I'm not saying State's a national contender, but at least they can't be that until they start contending in the ACC again. So as bad as I want to win tomorrow night, and I want to win as much as anybody, let's just understand that these two teams meeting as ranked opponents is special. It's the second most ranked matchup in the history of the sport. So we should want this to happen more often and understand, look, if we lose the game, we're going to have to deal with a bunch of crap on Twitter. It's not the end of the world. It's the second conference game of the season on the road in one of the tougher environments Carolina plays in all of college basketball. So, enjoy it. Let's I think Carolina wins. Let's hope Carolina wins, but understand that if we lose in some ways, it's going to help this team, it's going to help the conference, and it's going to help the sport. And I know that's not a popular opinion for people that are going to listen to this that hate NC State, but those are just the facts. And so with that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to this podcast after my unpopular opinion. You can, of course, find us on Spreaker, iTunes, and Spotify. I want to encourage you guys to check out my blog, the Roy's Boys blog. I'll have a preview of tomorrow's game up sometime tomorrow afternoon. You have a blog as well. We haven't really mentioned a lot on here. If you want to tell people about yours, you've talked enough, but I'll let you have the floor one more time.
Man, this has been an attitude-filled podcast here. By the way, I have a blog. Didn't know. The Heel Tough blog. It's got its own podcast as well. You guys can check that out on the same websites as well as iHeartRadio. Somehow mine has gotten approved, but this show still has not gotten approved. 15 shows in, still has not gotten approved. But we'll see if we can potentially get that approved down the line. I also, of course, write a blog like he said. You can see that on medium.com as well. Got some great stuff going on. That covers football. This covers basketball. Right now, we're in the midst of the basketball season. So, you're over here cranking this thing out, and you're about to go to school, and you're going to continue to crank it out, man. It's still going to be some great stuff. So, yeah, guys, we encourage you to check out both of those, and they pretty much work hand in hand. I mean, yeah, they seem separate. They seem like they're separate, outlets, but really, I mean, look, even though they're not the same name, we still work together on a lot of stuff. So check both of them out, guys. And as always, I mean, if any of you guys want to, do advertising or anything with us, just hit us up and let us know, and we'll get you, some of these things. We can sponsor some of these segments that we do in the show and everything like that. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got, man. And I think it's time to wrap this thing up.
Yeah, man, I do want to thank you for carrying the load because you did get to see the game Saturday. I will get to see tomorrow night's game.
I did my best Luke May performance. That's all right.
I will get to see tomorrow night's game in full, and I know you will as well. And we'll have a full breakdown of that and a preview of Louisville sometime later in the week.
I may or may not do a halftime video for you guys. Depends on how much anger I have going on. If I punch through a door, I don't think I'm going to be able to do a halftime. I'll have to ice that thing up. But if not, I think I might go on there and do one. So check that out, guys. I got us because you will be. I mean, I think. Yeah, you'll be. You do have to work up until right before the game. So we'll just make sure. Plus, so that means we won't be able to watch the game together. So I mean, if you want to do one, just let me know. But we'll figure something out for sure. So.
All right, thanks, man. Thank you guys for listening. Go Tar Heels.